Hello, everyone. So I'd like to thank the organization for the invitation. This communication will be focusing on the Bell Beaker ceramics, and more broadly, the organization of the Bell Beaker ceramic production based on the current state of the art in northwestern France. So our aim is to give a better understanding of the Bell Beaker ceramic phenomenon by deepening our knowledge on the ceramic production. Our approach combines typological and technological analysis, and our aim is to, through various methods, to discuss and refine the previous theoretical model. So after a brief state of the art, we will discuss the notion of standard to classify the Bell Beaker ceramics, and we will focus on two recent papers to demonstrate the limit of this concept. To reach a better understanding of the Bell Beaker ceramics, we will propose a revamped concept based on the latest technological studies that we call the remarkable production. Then it will be possible to push further and consider the organization of the Bell Beaker ceramic production. So in northwestern France, our latest inventory counts 555 Bell Beaker sites and 4,200 vessels. The chronology contains three stages of 2 centuries each between 2550 and 1950 BC. So we were able to define 3 different cultural groups based on the different decorative motif and technique. We have one in Normandy, another one in the Lower Brittany, and the last one is in Midwestern France. And this last group likely expand outside my study area in the so-called Midwestern France. And we might have a fourth group in the Anglo-Norman Isle that was also outside my study area. So the previous chronological model were built on empirical data regarding ceramic typology and sometimes the few radiocarbon datation available. So we used different methods to test its validity. We did matrix diagonalization, but also multiple correspondence analysis and principal component analysis using different data sets each time. And both of those methods comforted and strengthened the initial hypothesis. So here we show just one of the many results. It's a principal component analysis regarding 6 different ratios that we measure on 109 different Bell Beakers and early Bronze Age vessels. So it's a quantitative data. For example, we measure the size of the height of a beaker, and we divide it by the height of the belly, and we did 6 different measures like that. And on this graph, we split it in 3 parts just for readability, so it's the same data. I just highlight on the top left, for example, that we see most AOC beaker at the bottom, and the maritime beaker and the mixed beaker on the right side. But on the low right corner, we see that the early Bronze Age vessels are found on the left side, and likely all the remaining decorative styles are found just in between. So the plausible explanation for this is that we have a local evolution of the Bell Beakers after they appear in northwestern France. The funny thing is that we have been checking all the decoration of each dot, each beaker, and we see that the evolution of the shape also is the same for the evolution of the decoration. The 2 parameters seems to evolve all together on the long time. So now to go back to the standard. So obviously I tried to make it fit in the data I had, but I had some problem trying to follow the definition of the standard by Laure Solanova for several reasons. So the standard is either an S-shaped or rectilinear beaker, which means a soft S-shaped profile. With a low belly, the paste is usually red or orange and highly burnished. The decoration is made with a shell or a comb, with either the maritime, the linear, or the LBR decorative motif. So LBR is linear with reserved band, so it's a group of lines. And few beakers fit exactly this definition. Most of the time, there is one parameter that is missing, so this is not a huge problem. But sometimes we have some beakers that don't fit really in this typology because despite the fact that they have a hatchet band, well, on the lower row, for example, here, we see that they really don't fit these parameters for either because the technical ability is at stake, for example, the beaker on the left or those on the middle. And sometimes there is, for example, other decorative motif, like the chevron line on the beaker on the right. So, to explore the first case, we see, for example, that the technical ability might be very different depending on the Bell Beaker, and this question we addressed in a recent paper during the last meeting in Geneva. So, aside to the classic technological study, we build a methodology to compare the technical ability seen on the Bell Beaker. So we give a rate on different Bell Beaker, and we also added some commonware as a control sample. So we used as much as 11 parameters, as you can see here. So it's likely the symmetry of the vase, the thickness, the firing process, the tool used, and so on. And we did that on 114 vessels, and we ended up classifying them in 4 different categories. So from the letter A, so the most impressive beakers, to the letter D, so the least impressive. So for example, if we look at these 2 beakers, you see the beaker on the right is technically, it could be a maritime beaker. It has hatchet band and S-shaped profile. But when we look at how it's made, there is asymmetry. The treatment surface are less burnished than the usual. And on the other side, we see the beaker on the left. Well, it's very, very well made, one of the most impressive beakers I've seen. But on technical, it's not a maritime beaker because a cord has been used. So it's rather what we call a cord-zoned beaker. So it really has the question, how do we do with the standard in this case? How do we do with the typological attribution? So this is a result of most of the decorative style I've seen in northwestern France. And what we can see, well, without a surprise, that the commonware is really low, so least technical ability. But the biggest surprise was that the mixed beaker are at the top, indeed, cord-zoned, all over ornamented. They are the most impressive beaker, most impressive than the maritime beaker, but also most impressive than the AOC beaker. And this wasn't really expected. The other thing is that the linear beaker that belong to the definition of the standard, well, these linear beakers are not very well made, and if anything, all the other decorated Bell Beaker, well, they are more impressive than the linear beaker. And as the linear beaker with reserve band are very close to the linear beaker, it makes me wonder if we can consider them as a standard Bell Beaker, if all the other ceramic existing are better made, if we talk about the technical ability. This is really one of the problem. Another problem we have is that there is exchange of influence inside and outside of the Bell Beaker phenomenon. So it's really blurring the line between the different ceramic style. So decorative motif and decoration technique from the Bell Beaker tradition might be, and indeed have been found on other vessels, and the opposite is true as well. So at the local scale, we have commonware with a Bell Beaker shape, for example, on the top left. We also have Bell Beaker with a cordon, which is a classic feature of the commonware. But we also have mixed beaker at various degrees. So I talked already, for example. So it might be the shape or the decoration. For example, we have the maritime linear beaker, so maritime beaker, but with few horizontal lines. And we also have the mixed beaker, like the corded zone, the all-over ornamented decoration. And sometimes the beaker shape is close to the maritime, and the decoration is rather AOC. So the beaker you see on the top right is what Jean Lelgouache, who was there 24 years ago, called a false AOC beaker. You know, so technically the decoration is AOC, but the shape is much closer to the maritime beaker. And we think that we might have a symmetric example, for example, or false maritime beaker that might be found in the Netherlands. So I took one example of a paper from Laure Solonova and Eric Drent. So to finish, we also have examples of final Neolithic ceramics with Bell Beaker decoration. For example, in this case, this is the Artenac shape and the hatchet band decoration. And we also have Bell Beaker shape with a late final Neolithic decoration, like the framboise. So the situation is a bit complex, and if we rely solely on the decoration technique, we might miss very important information. So, following those observations, it seems a bit unfair to consider only the maritime beaker within the standard, when some mixed or undecorated beaker are sometimes more impressive when we look at the technical ability shown by the potter. So obviously, we could just exclude imitation of maritime beaker, but I think it's not enough. Overall, the difference between a maritime beaker, for example, and a maritime linear beaker, it only relies on some horizontal line, so it's not that big. And from the perspective of the chaîne opératoire, this is shallow. If decoration technique is less likely to be copied than the decorative motif, it's not impossible to do so. So potter might still guess, it's sometimes not complicated to guess that the decoration is made with a cord, but other tools it's more complicated, of course. And sometimes potters can just talk together. It's not impossible to think this was happening. So other parameters might be worth investigating beyond the decoration and the decorative motif. So ceramic technology that we did during our PhD was a very useful way to parse the information. So we have, for example, the clay recipe, the building techniques, the shape, the surface treatment, the firing process, and also the technical ability. And all of those things, in our eyes, they are more important because it's much harder to copy those things if you don't know how it's made. And so that's what we call the technical style. And on the other hand, we have the decorative motif, the decoration technique, and the overall organization of the decoration, and that's what we define as a decorative style. So, to sum up, we first excluded the linear and likely the affiliated linear with reserved band beakers from the definition of the standard based on their limited technical ability. Second, we distinguish the technical style from the decorative style. In Western France, the heart of the Bell Beaker ceramic production is an S-shaped beaker with a concave base, a low belly, the body is small coiled, the rim often has a beveled lips. The burnishing is impressive and it can be made in several stages. Sometimes it also compacts the paste. This is what we call the classic tradition, and there is several decorative styles that can be applied on this technical style. We might have maritime, of course, most frequent, but we also have mixed decorative style, undecorated beaker, maritime linear beaker, and also some dotted geometric beaker. And in exceptional cases, we have a cord decoration like AOC and also the horizontal cordon from the commonwear. So this model has consequences. For the decorative style, their definition should be stated more firmly by the combination of decorative motif and technique. Even though it increases the numbers, they can be identified much easier than the whole technical style because we can do this working only on a potsherd, for example. So in this sense, the maritime decorative style is just the most common one, but other cases might be worth investigating. For example, it seems that there is other vessels that show a very frequent overlap between a technical and a specific decorative style. Even if it's not as obvious as the maritime or the AOC beaker. For example, aside from the linear and linear with reserve band, we talk about them, we show that they are mostly a rectilinear profile, a low technical ability, but we also saw, for example, a large portion of carinated bowl with a brown color and a geometric decoration made with a hatchet triangle. Or we also have plenty of giant beaker with the technical style of commonwear and the decorative style based on nail impression. So Now, the question of the organization of the Bell Beaker ceramic production. So the work dealing with the function of the Bell Beaker is most of the time related to the social aspect, like, for example, alcohol consumption. So this is very important, of course, but I think it could be strengthened by discussing the underlying economical aspect. In other words, how the Bell Beaker are produced, are they different from other ceramic traditions, and how? And to discuss this situation, we will focus on three different axes. So the ceramic technology to obtain the data, the theoretical ceramology to interpret the data, and then the organization of production to link the potter to a broader economical network. So within the economy of past society, as you can see here, we work on a very specific topic. It's craft production, and especially the organization of ceramic production. So ceramic studies still revolve mostly on typology and more recently on technology, but the organization of the ceramic production is rarely addressed. So how to explain the economical success of the Bell Beakers? How was it possible? What was the condition for the success? For example, likely the number of potters, the way they work, the quantity of ceramics they produce. Is there any difference between the Bell Beakers and other type of thin and decorated ceramics that could explain this? Because we have plenty of thin and decorated ceramics before and after the Bell Beakers, and it doesn't have the same spread on a geographic point of view. So what we can say for now is that on the technicals, the Bell Beaker are not really more impressive or complex than the pre-existing final Neolithic thin and decorated ceramics. For example, I show some Artenac and Tremontex vessel here, and those ceramics are very, very impressive. Their shape is more complex than the Bell Beaker. Their thickness is like 3 or 4 millimeters. The burnishing is very impressive. So they are clearly different, but not inferior. It's not like the Bell Beaker is so well made that on technicals, people had to adopt the Bell Beaker because it's like a technological progress. This is not really what we see, and we see the ceramic from the final Neolithic is very well made as well. So the other thing that was a bit surprising is that mixed beaker on some early Bronze Age vessels show higher technical ability than the maritime or AOC Bell Beakers. So we don't have a steady decline over time, like the best beaker at the beginning, and then in the early Bronze Age, you don't know to make the ceramic anymore. It's not really what's happening. So the only thing that we know for sure is that the Bell Beaker developed very fast on a very wide scale, and it has very few internal variability. So to compare with previous and later thin and decorated ceramics, and this is, I guess, some of the most important parameters to take in account. So based on these three examples, so the potter skills aren't the explanation, neither the quantity of ceramics, we will see later. It's not so impressive in Western France, at least. But there is indeed a specific way to produce this ceramic, but it doesn't seem to be a technological advantage. Therefore, the reason for their success, we think, is either socio-economic or cultural, but not really technological. These vessels alone are just a symptom and not the primary cause of change. So, previous research, for example, by Laurent Salanova, shown that the Bell Beakers are no sign of wealth or prestige. So it seems that a key concept is missing, and we think it might be well, we should focus on the economic aspect, and therefore all the Bell Beakers are completely different from other ceramic tradition or not. So the idea is that we could compare the different chain opératoire of the different type of thin and decorated ceramics and classify them. So in this sense, for example, we know already that the common ware is mostly thick and coarse ceramic. But the exact same concept for the thin and decorated ceramics, we don't have that. So we think that the classic beaker fall in another group, and we decided to call it the remarkable product. And we defined this remarkable product by several things. So they have a long chain opératoire. So the crafting is either complex or time-consuming. There is another investment in the shape and the surface treatment. The appearance of the vessel seems to be very important. There is a monotony in the decoration, so there is a few or no room for creativity, so it's like an ideological straitjacket in the mind of the potters. And we know that the existence of commonwear and remarkable product at the same time reflects also a labor division within the potters. So there is an increasing specialization, but we don't think we have to interpret this as a hierarchy, you know, with a better potter than other. I just think like it's likely different purpose. So to understand the organization of the Bell Beaker ceramic production, we can start by crossing data related to the archaeological site, the context of discoveries, and the ceramics themselves. So there is several differences between final Neolithic, Bell Beaker, and early Bronze Age sites. So from a chronological perspective, it seems that Bell Beaker were contemporary with several archaeological cultures of the final Neolithic, and some of them are related to very impressive architecture. So we have the case on the top right of the giant building of the final Neolithic. So they are more than 100 meters long, 20 meters wide. So that's 2,000 square meters, and we might have a floor on top of that. So very, very impressive building. And there is also a ditched enclosure, so very massive archaeological structure. And we don't have any equivalent of this related directly for the Bell Beakers. In the best case, the biggest structure that we have is either individual grave with or without circular ditch, and we also have the almond-shaped building. So these are the few dwellings that were found these past few years in Western France. And this is the biggest structure for now related to the Bell Beakers, because in other cases, in burial, we mostly have megalithic monuments, but these monuments were built way before the Bell Beakers. So we have to wait several centuries until the early Bronze Age, so the first stage of the Bell Beakers, to see massive archaeological structure, like the elite burial of the Armorican barrow culture or their massive enclosure. We might add there is necropolis and field system in the early Bronze Age, but it is likely construction by acquiescence. But in any case, it is missing as well for the Bell Beaker. So this is just the current state of the art. Just to say that we don't have massive Bell Beaker site for now. I'd like to, but it's not there for the moment. So just some examples here of what we call the almond-shaped building. So it seems to be exclusively related for now to the Bell Beaker phenomenon, and we have like 20-something almond-shaped building in northwest France. So during the Bell Beakers, the number of sites is very important, especially on the shoreline, but they might be a bit overrepresented or easier to find that because the Bell Beaker are really easy to recognize. And the other thing is that those Beaker sites are really light, which means that we have few structure and we don't have a lot of material. We mostly have some pits, some post hole. So in the best case, we have these buildings, but that's mostly all that we have. And the diversity among the ceramic is not so big either. We have either Bell Beakers from one side or the commonware from the other. And when we have Bell Beaker, we have, for each stage of the Bell Beaker, 4 or 5 different decorative styles, and it changes gradually over time. And we know from the petrographic analysis that most of the Bell Beaker are produced very close to the archaeological site each time. So I was inspired by the work of Cathy Costin. She published several papers regarding the organization of crafting, and she distinguished 8 different types of organization, from simple to complex, following 4 different parameters. And in 2012, Laura Salanova used her paper to classify the Bell Beaker ceramic production, and she put them in the 3rd type, so what Cathy Costin calls the dispersed corvée. So the detail, it means that the Bell Beakers could be a production that is attached to the power instead of being independent. So they are assuming that their people are crafting Bell Beakers for the elite. The second parameter is that the concentration of production is dispersed by opposition of being nucleated. The third one is that the scale or composition is kin-based instead of labor-based. And the last one is that the intensity of the production is part-time instead of full-time. So we also think that the first type defined by Cathy Costing, the individual specialization, might fit because the relationship with the elite isn't clear for now in Western France. We don't know if they work for the elite to craft those beakers or if they belong to the elite, which is not exactly the same thing. But we must admit that the current theoretical frame produced by Cathy Costing isn't made specifically for the Neolithic or the Bronze Age period. And it maybe a further refinement could be useful to discuss in detail those categories. So we can take the example of the notion of household specialist used by Vanessa Forte for the end of the Neolithic in Italy, for example. So in any cases, considering the organization of production, it seems that the early beakers are now found in many different places in France, mostly on the shore, but also on the eastern border of France. And the available radiocarbon datation doesn't show really a lot of regional difference for the appearance of the Bell Beaker, but there is few reliable datation in the early stage, and the method is not yet precise enough due to the plateau effect of the first half of the third millennium. So if the vessels are made locally, it means that beaker potters were producing close to the site each time. Thus, we should consider the mobility of these craftsmen. If the potters are sedentary, it requires an important amount of these craftsmen since the first stage to cover a very wide area. On the other hand, if we assume that we had very mobile craftsmen, we can cover the same area with a lower amount of people, and it seems that the later option fits much better the data we currently have and is also more parsimonious. So despite the numbers, the Bell Beaker site and the quantity of ceramic each time is rather small. But this also asks another question: what is the situation for the remaining part of the population? So just to illustrate, you see what we see in the first beaker, and we see, for example, for the common ware that we mostly have flat bottom on the northwestern France, mostly have round bottom on the shore of the Mediterranean, some flattened bottom on the eastern side, and on orange and yellow, I just put the network on the flint, Grand Pressigny flint tools and dagger. So to conclude on this, we think that for the reason we explained, we should now abandon the notion of standard as it not really fits the archaeological data. From a methodologic point of view, it seems no more appropriate to distinguish at least two layers of information on the Bell Beakers to describe them. So we have what we call the technical style related to the technology, the core of the tradition from one side, and on the other hand, what we call the decorative style. That's much more labile. You know, it can be copy. There might be copy of it. So not all of those parameters, like the surface treatment, the firing process, the decorative technique, the decoration technique, might come from only one place. So or might be found on one beaker. So there is indeed very few perfect maritime beaker matching all the parameters, but there's a fair number of beakers that match like 80% of the parameters. And from a theoretical perspective, we will use the concept of remarkable production to describe the earliest and classic beaker tradition, just as the concept of common ware relates to the thick and coarse ceramics. We are not excluding the idea that there is other ceramic production in this period. Maybe they exist, but they are not defined for now. We don't have enough data. But this remarkable production were clearly made to be seen and crafted in a very specific way for that time. But there's still many questions where we don't have satisfying answer, and they should be investigating. So if there is strong mobility for the Bell Beaker potters, what about the host of craftsmen, for example, on the world population? which condition allow to settle and maintain these Bell Beaker networks. You know, the knowledge has to be shared, has to be transferred from one generation to another, so it's a very wide scale. It does ask some questions. And also, is there a relationship about the notion of economy, which rely on trust and ideology, like a belief system, for example, in the third millennium? We have been talking about this yesterday already. So these are just some pending questions that I hope I will be able to make some progress in the next few years. So thanks for your attention.